Well, good morning to Heather.
Yes,
Morning, Heather.
good morning. It's nearly dawn.
Nearly
It's
dawn.
still dark outside, yes. The dawn chorus will start very soon.
That's wonderful. It's a big thank you for filming your presentation, which was fantastic. Thank you very much. We've all enjoyed it. We've had people from around the globe watching. I don't know if you noticed the countries that people were watching from, but it's a really good attendance. So you did? Yes. It was stunning. For everybody else, this is a big chance for you to ask your questions of Heather. And Heather, just to remind you, has got up shockingly early for us. For us Brits, it's getting dark now till about 7:30 in the morning, and Heather's got up really early in Australia, just so that she can be live with us. So this is your big chance to type in your questions. If you go to the chat tab at the bottom of your screen, you click on that, it'll take you to the chat box and you type in your question there. And make sure that you press return at the end of your typing, and then I'll work with Heather and we'll make sure that we pick up questions. So we've got about 20 minutes or so before we get to 8 o'clock. I'm Peter Barnard, Chairman of the Historical Dance Society, and big hello to everybody who's hung on here in Zoomland. I'm sure we've got lots of questions. While the rest of you are thinking about it, I'm going to say something to Heather. Heather, one of the many instruments I play are English bagpipes. So I was fascinated that the South Sea Islanders were really interested in hearing the bagpipes played among other instruments. And that picture you showed, I think, had either a bassoon or a kirtle in the other instruments. So it was that was a really good thing. It made my evening really.
Yes, it's quite remarkable, the instruments they took with them.
Yes.
And one of the things that came out as well, which I didn't mention, was that Joseph Banks, who had planned to go with Cook on his second voyage, he decided not to go because he couldn't take his consort of musicians with him. There wasn't room, and he had so much other paraphernalia that he wasn't allowed any more space. So he couldn't take his musicians, and he was so annoyed about it that he drew out of the expedition, didn't go.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So this little snippets of information that I wasn't able to put in the video without making it much longer.
No, of course. Well, okay, there's a question here from Meryl Thompson, who asks, were musicians actually employed as musicians on ships, or were they sailors who happened to play instruments?
They were sailors who happened to play instruments. Sometimes they're registered in the ship's log or whatever it was. So we know that some of them did play, but more often than not, they were just Marines or sailors who played incidentally. They weren't specially employed. On Cook's second voyage and third voyages, they actually did employ special musicians. They asked that they train a bagpiper particularly. So, but generally they weren't. They just were musicians. They weren't sort of highly regarded in many ways. It was just a talent that people had that was accepted.
No, indeed. Okay, then a follow-on question from Paul and Anne, who ask whether sailors were able to read music, or do they learn the tunes by ear? Many folk musicians would.
A bit of both. There are some manuscripts of musicians on ships, a few. I expect that there was a mixture, that a lot of them just did play by ear, but there's some wonderful manuscripts of music that we have that give us a real insight into what was played at the time. They'd be good if there was more of them, but there are a few, yes.
And Pip Soprano asks whether you have any evidence of local South Sea Islanders dance moves being brought back to the UK.
Oh yes, there was a lot of information about the dancing because it was so different. You know, they used their whole bodies, and often it was seen as very, what's the word, sexual in nature. So it was a, you know, a bit of a novelty, but also the very detailed records they kept have been used in recent times when they've been looking to reconstruct the dances. Because when the missionaries went to those places and they saw this dancing, which they thought was very modest, they stopped the islanders dancing it. So in recent times, the records that they kept have actually been quite helpful. Not that I'm not saying that what am I not trying to say? I'm not trying to say that, you know, the sexual nature that they saw there was what we regard as immodest today.
Yes.
But, you know, back in 1800, people had rather different views.
Okay, another question. We've got lots of questions. We're going to try and get through as many as we can do. Hilary Burlock asks, in what types of primary sources you found references to dance and music? Was it ships, logs, voyage narratives? And did you find any in administrative sources of the Royal Navy?
In the Royal Navy, there's some information about the musicians. Otherwise, they tend to be in the journals that the people on the voyages kept. They're the main sources. So on subsequent voyages, there's more and more information. So on the third voyage, a lot of sailors or officers kept records. So lots of information, yes.
Very good. Rennie Camus asks about the image you showed of the dancing sailor on Scrimshaw's blade, and whether you could say something more about that. And she goes on to say, I wonder if there's a connection to rapper swords. Of course, they're a feature of the northeast dancing. So you remember the beautiful carving, is it whalebone, I think it was, or the narwhal, which with the dancing sailor.
Yes, that's a scrimshaw. Because there's so few illustrations of sailors dancing, I draw them from everywhere. I think that comes from a whaling museum in Nantucket, in America. So what was the other question?
Yes, I wonder whether there was a connection to rapper swords.
Well, I don't really know. I'm not aware of any connection at all. Sailors often used to dance with a stick, as that illustration showed. That was quite common. We're not quite sure what that's about, why they had a stick, but they're often represented dancing with a stick.
But it would be fairly unlikely to have a full rapper side on a boat going to the southeast.
Yeah, I doubt it somehow. And I don't think they'd be having rapper swords either. Not many horses on ships. So something like
that. Pete Walker goes back to the bagpipes and wonders whether you know what sort of bagpipes Cook's men played.
No, I don't really. There is a reference to the piper McAvor, I think he was. He was referred to as a Highlander. So perhaps Highland pipes, but we don't really know.
Now, there was certainly a drift northwards in the UK for the continuation of bagpipe playing. It went out of fashion in the south and became a northerly instrument, very much then into Scotland, but around the borders. So Yes, in the northeast it would still be a northern bagpipe. Right, we've got another question. Yes, Derek comments. Aisha asks would some of the dances about Cook's explorations have made it to North America?
Quite likely. Certainly Captain Cook's country dance. The tune is recorded, I think it's in the Rush manuscript, which is in North America.
Yep.
So I presume they would have. Certainly the circus music probably went there because of Ricketts taking the equestrian drama there. I expect some of the music was there, yes.
Yep. Okay, Vanessa Collingridge asks, were officers more likely to have and to play instruments than the men on the lower decks? Or was it vice versa, or was it equal numbers?
I suspect it was equal numbers. We know that officers around that time particularly favoured the flute. There's quite a lot of illustrations of midshipmen, and Matthew Flinders, who was an Australian explorer from England, obviously, he played the flute and kept some notes about what he played. Yeah. So yes, I think the fiddle was probably, the fiddle and the fife were the most common for ordinary sailors, but officers also played instruments too. Mm. Mm.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to keep up the questions which continue to come in. Darlene Hamilton asks, what was the most surprising thing you learned about Cook during your research?
Oh, I think perhaps when they took Omai back to Tahiti, the references to them having dances for the islanders and how they loved the English country dancing, and the islanders also imitated the sailor's hornpipe, and everyone thought it was hilarious, and they had a great time doing that. I thought that was one of the highlights.
Excellent. Right. Any final questions from anyone? I think we've exhausted the questions. A couple of comments. Many appreciations to you, Heather, for what was a really well-crafted talk, and all of our other talks in this series have been presented live, so that you get the interaction then with the live speaker. That didn't work so well because of the time differences.
No, I didn't fancy being up at 4 o'clock giving a lecture.
But it meant that the way in which you'd put the video together, which was very, very, very professionally done, so it was much appreciated by people. I know that. So thank you for taking the trouble for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Simon Harmer says, what sort of dancing did the sailors dance on board?
They danced hornpipes and country dances.
Yeah,
and that's it. That's what we know. There is a very interesting reference, not from Cook, but from a bit earlier, that they danced Portsmouth and they danced Hayes, and sometimes they just hopped around the references. So that's a good one. Nice to have a dance name. That's quite unusual.
Yes. Sorry. Telephone calls still keep coming in, so it's the advantage of videos that you can cut out that sort of stuff. Sorry,
Well, Anne Day says, excellent overview of dances representing history, and lovely to know how careful Cook was towards the indigenous inhabitants. And Vanessa says, how did the sailors cope doing country dancing with the lack of women on board?
Well, dancing in those days was rather more like sport in a way, that you didn't need women, you didn't need men. It was just something that people did. It was like being in a cricket team, so to speak. People just danced together. Yeah,
Yes.
like Morris, you know, it really didn't matter. One of my other topics of research is convict dance. And there's many references to convicts who were kept segregated, dancing quite frequently. So they obviously didn't need people of the opposite sex. It wasn't an issue at all.
Right. Okay. Was there anything else that you wish you'd have had time to tell us about before we part company? A couple of minutes to finish off.
No.
No. Okay.
But it's been a wonderful opportunity to make the video and have that as an enduring resource. I'm really appreciative that you contacted me about doing a lecture, because I wouldn't have thought of doing it otherwise, and I think it's a great thing to have done. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. The whole series has been recorded as we went back into from April onwards, and they're all available for people to see again free of charge on our YouTube channel. And that is a fantastic legacy of wide-ranging expertise, knowledge, and experience around the historical dance world. So it's fantastic to have you in that collection of people. So thank you very much. We're going to wrap up now. So it's a big thank you to you, Heather, for a fabulous talk this evening. And thank you to everybody also for joining us on Zoom to finish off the evening. A quick advert for next month. Next month, we're in a live Zoom format. It'll be on Wednesday, the 18th of November, and now normal time of 7 o'clock in the evening. It's free of charge. On that Wednesday, we'll have Andy Richards and Stephen Rowley talking about Rosemaresque, the fun of recreating a dance that gripped court and commoner. Steve Rowley was until recently the chairman of the Tabourist Society, and Andy Richards is currently the chairman of the Tabourist Society. I'm sure it'll be a great evening. Please sign up. We limit the numbers to 100 on these talks. For those of you who managed to miss it, have a look again at the video on YouTube. If you're a member of the Historical Dance Society, and if you're not, I encourage you to think about joining. You'll be getting the normal weekly blog from me, relaying all sorts of interesting and exciting things. Now, a final advert is that on the weekend of the 7th and 8th of November, we have our own Playford Festival online, where we have 10 sessions, 5 on the Saturday, 5 on the Sunday, on a conference entitled Playford Now, Then and Now. We'll have a lot of presentations about dance. We'll have a workshop on dance. We'll have some musician. Should be a great weekend. It costs £15 for one session or for the whole lot. So please sign up. You can find out how to do that on our website, historicaldance.org. Otherwise, it's a big thank you again to Heather. Big thank you to everybody else. And good evening. We'll see you next month. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.